Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Lettermen Row. Of course, today's show is presented by Big Game Factory, Big Game Football Factory. Go to biggameusa.com/Buckeyes. Get your hands on one of these limited edition Ohio State National Championship footballs. It's got the gray fractal swoosh that you find on the Ohio State National Championship ball, the one that they used to beat Notre Dame in the title game. You find the CFP logo, the first 12 team logo. It's a pretty nice looking logo. And then you find the iconic Ohio State logo. High and tight, ball security is job security. That's why I still have my job, because I don't fumble the football. Carlos Lachlan will be proud. I'm toting this rock around the house because Ohio State won the national championship. You can too. Go get your hands on. Actually, you know what? Go get your paws on one of these Ohio State footballs today. It's the actual football Ohio State used, premium leather. Go to biggameusa.com/Buckeyes. Get your hands on one of these limited edition national championship footballs today. Mick Walker on the other side of your screen. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. We are back in our humble abodes after being in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center for a couple days, a couple rounds of the first 2 days of spring practice. And we will talk today, Mick, about what we've learned so far from the first 2 days of spring practice. I've got a couple things on the brain that we haven't really discussed so far on video. You've got a couple things. And then Friday, we'll reconvene to break down what's happening on the recruiting trail, because I believe the Buckeyes have a big fish on campus on Friday that we'll talk about a little bit. Mick, I'll give you the reins to go first. We did not break this down beforehand. I have no clue what you're about to talk about. What did you learn the first couple days of spring practice?
Yeah, I learned that they're still not using that football. They've removed the gray fractal swoosh when they have a normal football now, just because, as Ryan Day put it to us on a Monday, they're trying to make sure this team knows that they didn't win the national championship. So the gray fractal swoosh football has been retired for now. Aside from our forensic game, Big Game Factory, Big Game Football, and the football that they are selling to all Ohio State fans, the other big thing that I learned was just that I don't think anybody's going to be Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins in Ohio State for a long time, but I'm really buying stock in this running back group with James Peoples, CJ Donaldson. Maybe it's because they spoke to us on Wednesday and I'm a little bit jaded from just hearing what they had to say. But I was talking about it with one of my buddies last night because he saw some pictures on social media and we were talking about the practice. The biceps on not only Carlos Lachlan, but James Peoples, but CJ Donaldson, all of them, they are just physically sculpted. Even Bo Jackson, I don't know, again, if the biceps help with ball security, but they are all jacked, and I'm expecting some big things from them. I know everybody likes to say J.K. Dobbins for James Peoples, and maybe he is that, but I think we're going to get to know about James Peoples by just James Peoples and know, he's the next J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, it's interesting because you always want to see who the next is. Like, you're a recruiting guy, Mick. We're going to talk Friday about Jackson Cantwell, and I guarantee after that, somebody's going to be like, do you have a player comp for him? You know, when Jackson Smith and Jigba was here, what's the player comp? Can he be what Garrett Wilson was? When Marvin Harrison was here, it was like, well, can he be better than Chris Olave? The player comps, you always have to go to player comps, and we're always going to do that. It's hard to look out at that linebacker room right now with how athletic it is and things like, okay, like, is this as good as the 17 linebacker room or the 16 linebacker? We're always comparing people. So I don't fault anybody, including ourselves, for comparing James Peoples to J.K. Dobbins. Flip on the high school tape for both of them. They look, pretty similar. But also, like, James Peoples made it pretty clear, and I actually really enjoyed the conversation with him Wednesday, as we record this on Thursday morning. He was like, well, I see the comparisons, but I'm my own back, and I want to be my own back. I love that. Like, hey, I don't mind the comparisons, but also, like, don't compare me because I'm James Peoples. I loved that. And then I thought CJ Donaldson, gave some pretty insightful answers. We'll have some stuff from him, over there at lettermenrow.com. So it was an interesting, productive day talking to the running backs. And, you got a train going through.
Yeah, there's walking distance to a train track right down here. And that's just because the Lock Boys, anybody that's on the path of the Lock Boys this coming football season, they're on the train tracks. You better watch out. That's just what the offensive line's paving too. Is they're laying the railway, and these running backs are going to hit it this fall. I'm willing to bet you after what we've seen through 2 practices.
I love that. I don't have a train near me, but I do like the sound. Like you hear the sound of a train coming through. It's like, whoa, back up.
Big
James Peoples and if James, our friend Matt Parker, huge locomotive guy. If James Peoples and CJ Donaldson are coming down the tracks, you better get out of the way. As Tim May likes to say, clickety clack right down the track. That train is rolling. What I learned, Nick, to get us back on track here is we're already off the rails, another train reference there,
There we go.
early in the show, is just how comfortable in his own skin, in his own body, in his position CJ Hicks looks. I'm not ready to say that it looks natural yet, but this is the second time I'll say this on a video. I made the joke to one of the Lettermen Row board members and to CJ himself after practice that he looks like Lawrence Taylor against the trash cans, but we have to see what he does against tackles. But for right now, man, like, he's a sponge. You can see it. He was overworking with Caden Curry, who was leading Logan George and some of the freshmen through some pass rushing drills after practice on Wednesday. I kind of took note of that in my moleskin notebook there that I have. Caden Curry leading the way for those guys, and CJ Hicks was sponging that up, trying to learn as much as he could about pass rush. When they're going through drills, he looks very attentive. And if I'm being honest, like, there were times in the past where I thought that maybe, it just wasn't working out at linebacker. I'll put it that way. And so to see him fully attentive, fully ready to buy into being a defensive end, to, only doing stand-up stuff, which I think, is best for him. He's not a hand in the dirt defensive end, and I don't think he ever will be. You can't make him one. He's more of like, and you don't want to use these terms, but like just the way that they're going to use him, not the production. He's more of like the Micah Parsons or the, those kind of guys, those stand-up, defensive ends or 3-4 linebackers. Like, he looks super comfortable. I've made big note of that because it's one thing to want to be in that position. It's another thing to embrace being in that position. It's a third thing altogether to be comfortable embracing it and doing it. And I think he's doing the all three at the same time. And I really like where that's heading. Obviously, again, they're going to put the pads on Friday, and we'll see what he looks like in a real pass rush setting against real offensive tackles and not trash cans. But so far, so good for CJ Hicks at defensive end.
Yeah, he could be a good stand-up comedian too, not just a stand-up edge rusher. I mean, he's a pretty
he's a funny guy. Yeah.
The other guy that's pretty funny, and it's not really, it's just a physical thing. Ethan Onianwa is just a massive human being. That's one of my big takeaways from getting to see him these couple practices. And I believe, if we're not talking, including CJ Hicks, who was talking to the media just about until they kicked us out of the facility, he was just kind of chatting it up with some people, including you and I. But the last three guys I saw with pads on off the field would have been Tegra Shabola, Carson Hinsman, and Ethan Onianwa. And I'm just fascinated to see. We haven't even really learned anything about it because I think that you need to get the pads on. But you got Tegra, who's one of the last guys on the field. Luke Montgomery seems to have established himself. I mean, he's sitting right over here on this shoulder. That's actually Luke's picture from his NIL deal up in his hometown of Findlay that I got. But yeah, Tegra, Luke, and then you have Austin Cereville, who just got an Iron Buckeye. I mean, these three guys are all battling for 2 guard spots, it seems. And it's just going to be an absolute dogfight that I'm fascinated to kind of see more of as we get into like this spring, the Student Appreciation Day practice, into this the spring showcase, and then even down into fall camp. So that's the other thing I've been keeping a close eye on, because I think all three of those guys are trying to elevate, and there's only going to be probably 2 of them that are going to get on the field.
Well, it's interesting because Austin has been playing tackle. So, I think he's cross-training to be potentially the 6th offensive lineman if he doesn't win the starting job. I think Tegra could probably do a little bit of that too, where he could be the 6th if he doesn't win a starting job. Luke is training at center a little bit along with guard, where he could be an interior swing piece, whereas the other 2, I think, are probably interior, exterior swing pieces. It's just part of the process that Ohio State's doing right now, where Ryan Day talked about it at length on Monday when I asked him about Austin Cereville. Is like, we have to have guys ready. I think they learned their lesson from last year of having versatility on the offensive line, and they're using that lesson to apply it to this year where, hey, who's to say they're not going to play another 16 or 17 game schedule? We're not right now. So I won't be surprised if they do, because of how talented this team is. So we'll see. But I do like the cross training there. And like you said, like, those guys look imposing. This offensive line has leveled up, in my opinion. And to be honest, all of those guys that you named, other than Onianwa, were recruited by Justin Fry. So for all the shortcomings that Fry has had, that Fry had, it's all past tense on the recruiting trail, like, the hits are hitting, and they're hitting like in a big way. Tegra looked good at the end of the year when he was splitting reps. Luke Montgomery looks like a guy who is just on a, upward trajectory. Austin Cereville looks like a guy who's going to be one of the best offensive linemen on the team, maybe in the Big Ten, quickly. And then the 2 tackles, obviously, they're bringing in from the transfer portal. But the hits that Justin Frye, I think Ian Moore is going to end up hitting down the road. The hits have been big hits for Justin Frye, and I think that's a credit to him. Whereas, there are the shortcomings that we don't need to get into right now, but if any credit goes to him, it's the fact that he was developing offensive linemen at a really good level. And when he was landing guys, they're contributing to this team. And I think that's something that you can at least give him credit for. Good observation there. The other thing that I learned, I know we're kind of going fast pace here, but I wanted to, bounce it off of each other and see, I've got 2 or 3, you've got 2 or 3. We'll see where we land at the end of this thing. I am super fascinated by this wide receiver room. Brian Hartline has never rotated a lot of wide receivers. I think 2019 might be the most he ever rotated. He had Austin Mack, KJ Hill, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Ben Vick. And so he had 5. And all 5 of those guys played a lot. And Garrett kind of forced his hand there. Well, this year he's got Jeremiah Smith, he's got Carnell Tate, he's got Brandon Ennis, and you think, okay, they're set at wide receiver. Well, not so fast, my friend, because Mylan Graham looks ready to be a playmaker for Ohio State. So that gives you 4. And then we're not on the Jeremiah Smith train at all with this next guy, at all. So if you think freshman impact, do not think 1,300 yards, best wide receiver in America, robbed for the Blitnikoff Award. But I'm telling you guys, Quincy Porter looks like Brian Hartline got another one. He had an interesting drop on a route run on Wednesday that made the notebook as just that was a freshman mistake there. But remember, Jeremiah Smith's first ever target at Ohio State was a drop touchdown pass. So, those drops are something that they can kind of work out of these guys. And, these freshmen are still getting their feet wet. I am very intrigued by Quincy Porter, not to mention Bryson Rogers as a guy who played probably more than people realize he played last year because he didn't get the ball when he was on the field, but he was playing significant time, 8, 9, 10 snaps a game at wide receiver. That's not nothing. And so, he's another guy who's going to be in the mix. Absolutely. And so there's 6 right there. And then, does Phillip Bell earn playing time? Probably not, to be honest, but he looks like he could, but it's probably too log jammed for him considering the slot is Ennis, Rogers, and Graham. But I think Quincy Porter could spell Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith. Oh, by the way, Max Clare is also a pseudo wide receiver at his tight end spot because of the vertical threat that he provides this offense. So this wide receiver room, super intriguing to me. I think if Quincy Porter hits as a freshman, it's the deepest room Brian Hartline's ever had. And that's not to say it's the best. I think you could say that it's the deepest. And maybe Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham have the Marvin Emeka Rose Bowl breakout at the end of the season and not much else, but there's an option there to rotate if you're Brian Hartline if you want to. And I've learned that this might be the deepest room he's had at Ohio State so far. The next time we talk to an assistant coach will be Monday, and we're going to talk to Hartline. And I really want to ask him about that. If he's going to have to change his philosophy and how he rotates based on the talent level that he has in the room. Because again, this is a deeper room than I think we're used to. It's not just the top 3. I think it's the top 1, then the next 2, then the next group of 3 underneath that.
Yeah, I've been really impressed by Quincy Porter. There's some clips going around. Ryan Day spinning the pigskin at practice on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
He had a nice back shoulder connection with Quincy Porter, so that was fun to see. I've been a big fan of Mylan Graham since he was in high school. Obviously, I covered Purdue previously, and Purdue was very much trying to get involved with the Mylan Graham recruitment. I think Ohio State and Brian Hartline always had kind of a leg up in that recruitment, but I've been a big fan of him. He's a great kid, and I'm interested to see what he can do in this year too. Because if you squint, not last year is if you squint really hard. This year, it's if you squint a good bit, you can kind of see the Garrett Wilson, Mylan Graham comparisons just because of the 5, the build, the slot, a lot of these things. I'll be interested to see what he can do this year. And I think if we're going to go in another round of these things that we've learned this year, I'm going to leave one position group for Spencer because Spencer and I got caught up talking to this yesterday afternoon. I think I know where he would go if we made him do a third thing. So I'm going to stick with a couple of guys that just walking off the practice field yesterday that kind of stuck out in my caught my eye. And that's these younger defensive tackles. And I'm talking Eric Mensah, who is a redshirt freshman, Will Smith Jr., who's been in the program for a couple of years as well. And then you have true freshmen like Trajan Oden and Jarquez Carter. Like, I'm just fascinated to see if these guys can actually jump into the rotation and earn some playing time. I think guys like Tywone Malone and a few other guys, like even CJ Donaldson credited Tywone Malone a lot when it comes to just helping transition from the transfer portal on Wednesday. So that was cool to hear. But I think Trajan Odom is the guy that we probably will talk about more in the future. He tried to drop in on Tavian St. Clair's podium. He didn't end up asking a question, but he was just observing the whole thing. He didn't know what to ask, or else he said he would have asked a question. I think Eric Mensah is somebody that every time I see him, I go, this guy has physically to probably play at Ohio State. I don't know what it's going to look like when they get the pads on, when you guys have Austin Sarabelle, Luke Montgomery, and Taylor Shabola trying to block you. But I think there's a path there. Eric Mensah earning some playing time as a backup nose tackle. And then Will Smith Jr. Just every time we look over there at that defensive line group, it's that second group, and Will Smith Jr., all 6'2", 6'3", 280, 290 pounds of them.
Looks good.
Looks good. Just in there fighting for playing time, wrecking havoc when it comes to some of the cans. Like, these cans hate to see Will Smith Jr. coming as well. And I'm been kind of impressed with the backup defensive lineman here so far, the young guys. So I'm interested to see if they can make a step up. And I'm really interested to see where you go with this next one, because I think there's a position group and maybe even a player that we can kind of go with.
Hey, I just want you to know that there's a freshman wearing number 4 that's making some headway. Number 4 might be the new number 7 for Ohio State. I'm just letting you know, because if number 4 on defense is anything like number 4 on offense was last year, we're going to have some conversations, okay? I had 2 different people after practice come up to us when we were sitting there at the Woody, and I didn't even have to say anything. I was just like, let me hear about it. And they both were just blown away. It's the athleticism, it's the quickness, it's the instinct to get to the football, it's being around the ball, it's breaking up passes. I don't think we can get to like the Jeremiah Smith level with him, but man, like, Devin Sanchez is coming on already, and coaches are recognizing that already. And if by the end of March he still has his black stripe, there's a little bit of me that'll be surprised.
Yeah, I think there's one Devin Sanchez. All that buzz has been crazy, and it was cool to hear what kind of people were saying with him after practice, just because it's only been 2 practices. Like, they haven't even put pads on, but I mean, there's just something special about how people talk about Devin Sanchez. That was interesting on Wednesday and even on Monday after one practice, just kind of seeing people.
Yeah, and
put the jersey on.
And it's interesting because, like, Ohio State brought back Davis Nickmanos, and they brought back Jermaine Matthews. Like, they truly do not need Devin Sanchez to step up and be an elite corner this year, because they have those guys. Like, in 2021, thank God Denzel Burke was ready as a true freshman to play and be, like, really good. He was really good as a freshman. I think people, because of the Oregon game from this past year, forget how good Denzel was as a freshman. It is rare for a corner to be that good as a freshman. Jermaine Matthews did it, and we're seeing the payoff of that heading into year 3. But there's conversations about whether Jermaine Matthews can play nickel, because, you know, he already has that position of versatility. He's done it before. Is he going to have to play nickel if Devin Sanchez is this good? Oh, by the way, Bryce West, apparently, from people that we've talked to, is showing the positional versatility that Jordan Hancock flashed that unlocked the Ohio State defense in a big way toward the end of the season, where they could play, 3 safeties, and, Jordan Hancock being one of them, and slide back to bring Caleb Downs back into the box. If Bryce West is doing that from the nickel spot, that changes the equation entirely, because we've penciled in Lorenzo Styles Jr. at nickel, but Bryce West had, according to our sources, a couple pass breakups yesterday. It looked pretty good. Obviously, they're going to put the pads on Friday, and he's got to do something different now with pads on. He's got to be better in team settings with pads on, but, like, he's making a move in his second year at Ohio State after having an injury and sitting out from spring last year. So, like, this cornerback room is so talented. And the reason that I say that is I haven't even mentioned Aaron Scott yet. And he's a guy that I think can play legitimate minutes for this team, or legitimate reps for this team heading into year 2. He's a really well-built, long, rangy corner, the perfect Tim Walton mold. So, it's just interesting to me because they brought back Davis Nickmanos. They brought back Jermaine Matthews. And I think you had to at least bring one of those guys back. But now, all of a sudden, with Devin Sanchez already looking good, And with Bryce West coming along, and you already know Lorenzo Styles has made some improvements. He looks more athletic and comfortable in that nickel spot than he did last year. Aaron Scott's coming along. Like, man, like it's hard to see how Tim Walton's going to manage this room, but that's why he's a co-defensive coordinator. It's why he got yet another raise this year. It's why he's getting paid legitimately the big bucks to do this. Like, he's elite, man. He's elite at what he does. Now he's got to be elite at managing all of this room. Because I don't know if you know this, Mick, but corner is a room with some guys who have a little bit of confidence in themselves. And so I think it's going to be interesting to manage this room for Tim Walton. If there's one person I think can do it, it's Walton. It's OG Walt. But at the same time, like, it is going to be a task to manage it because of how much talent is in this room. And Devin Sanchez just seems like he's on a rocket ship right now.
Yeah. And really, like, when we talk about Devin Sanchez, and I think if Devin Sanchez is really good, like, the path is pretty clearly there. Okay, he takes over one outside cornerback spot. You slide Jermaine Matthews in. He plays nickel, and boom. Like, Devin Sanchez's path to getting on the field, I can understand it. And then you still are able to play Jermaine Matthews and Davison Igbenos. And the one guy that I think, and you mentioned that I think can really kind of like shake things up, upset the apple cart, whatever kind of analogy we want to use, is Bryce West. If Bryce West can not only overtake Lorenzo Styles at that nickel spot, but then also like lock it down from even needing Jermaine Matthews to move in, then you're looking at it as our NFL head coach, Mike Tomlin for the Pittsburgh Steelers, like I say, you're looking at a couple of 2 dogs, 1 bone situation at the cornerback position when it comes to having Davison Igbenos and Jermaine Matthews and Devin Sanchez all probably being able to start. And you're only going to be able to play your start 2 of them. And then obviously Ohio State has rotated in cornerbacks before. I think they'd probably do that with Devin Sanchez this year. But if Devin Sanchez is so good that he needs to be on the field, then you're looking at maybe rotating Davison Igbenos and Jermaine Matthews. And those are 2 guys that are not only really talented, but really highly compensated. And that's just, I think, the domino effect of if that Bryce West is able to take that nickel spot, which after what we heard on Wednesday is, I'd say, at least a legitimate possibility. I think
plausible. I would say right now we'll start it at plausible. It's plausible, it's one day, it's 2 days of practice. He's got to sustain it. But you get excited when you start to hear these things. And we're already getting excited based on what we've been hearing coming out of the Woody so far. You know, there's some other names that I think could probably start to contribute on special teams, you know, like a Fahim Delane. I think there's guys like a Garrett Stover who runs really fast. We heard about him all year last year as a guy who could contribute on special teams. Not sure if it really clicked last year, who I think could be like a special team star a la like Gabe Powers was last year for Ohio State before he transferred. Like, he was a good special teams player. You need those kind of guys. And so, you know, I think the freshman linebackers, Petterjohn and Alford and even Eli Lee, could those guys crack one of the special teams positions? Yeah, I think so. And so, you know, we're starting to piece together what's going on here just through 2 days, but it's a quick 2 days because Ohio State's only going to be at this thing in spring practice for 3.5 weeks. And so it's all going to move very quickly. And that's why we want to do these things where we're just kind of unloading the notebook in a video form and talk about it. Mick, let's get out of here. I want 2 things from you. Have you noticed anything different about me today, other than the fact that I finally stopped looking homeless and shaved my face?
Well, Spencer, typically you come on here and say you're wearing Roback. I don't see the little dog, so it doesn't look like Roback to me. Do they have more products than just the hoodies?
Listen, man. It got cold overnight. Don't have the air conditioner. Don't have the heater on anymore. It's spring officially for me. That means that it's a little chilly in my house. Luckily, I have this heavier Roback hoodie. This thing is Roback. It's so nice. It's so nice. So it's got like this breathability, like stretchy fabric on the sides in case you start to get a little plump in your sweatshirt. Like, it'll stretch out a little bit for you. It's breathable. It's nice. But guess what? It's heavy. Like, this is a heavier hoodie. I probably gained 3 pounds wearing this thing. It's heavy, but it's super nice. It doesn't feel, I'm not sweating right now. I don't feel hot. I'm sitting in my house. This is my first time wearing this thing. My wife got it for me for Christmas. She wanted to see me in something other than those lightweight Hezzy hoodies. Oh, by the way, I'm about to order another Roback polo, the Azalea 2.0, just in time for spring, just in time for my golf trip with my friends. I can't say enough about Roback. Again, I've been a fan of Roback since before they partnered with us, but right now you can get your first purchase 20% off, a generous 20% off from the best fit, best feel folks at Roback. That's 20% off if you use the code Letterman20 at Roback.com. That's RHOBACK.com, and use the code Letterman20 at checkout for 20% off your first purchase. Go there, get that Azalea collection, get this hoodie just in time for spring runs, just in time for spring errands. Like, spring cleaning, you can wear this thing out and about. You can wear it inside. Dress it up, dress it down. That's what Roback does best. The pants, the polos, the hats, the sweatshirts, the shorts, they have it all over at roback.com, and get 20% off, a generous 20% off, and use the code Letterman20. Yeah, man. And then shout out to Everett, man. You got a text the other day, your buddy Everett, saying that he liked my Rose Bowl hat. I wish I could tell you guys where to get this Rose Bowl hat, but it's a pretty limited edition thing, and I'm pretty happy to have my hands on it. So, some of the other guys on the beat, I think Berm got one. I think Bill Landis, Dollar B got one. Adam the King was trying to get one. 10 TV's own Adam the King was trying to get his hands on one because he went with the gray and black. He regrets it because he wants the white. I'm rocking it, though, man. I'm going to keep wearing it because I love this hat and I love the Rose Bowl. But I also love you, the viewer of Lettermen Row's content. That's why I want you right now to go to lettermenrow.com, get $1 for your first week. That's a full week of spring ball and March Madness over at lettermenrow.com for just $1. Go there right now, get all the mixed content on the recruiting side, get all of my content on the team side. Of course, AG, Alex Glatton's got you covered on both. Does a little bit of double duty over at lettermenrow.com. Come join the Letterman Lounge message board. We're talking every day. We're talking March Madness. We're talking spring football. Come join us. We'd love to have you hang out in there. For now, I'm going to go get to work, get some content up at lettermenrow.com, then watch the NCAA tournament. That's Mick Walker on the other side of your screen. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys back here on Friday for a full recruiting breakdown of what's happened during spring ball. Until then, just go to lettermenrow.com.